Jai, Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for coming tonight to this program of Krishna consciousness. After doing Sankirtana together, we'll speak a few words about this process. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us a nice verse in which he describes the glories of this chanting of the holy name. In 6 features, he says, Cheto Darapanam Arjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavathu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivarthanam Pratibadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. When we chant this Hare Krishna mantra, it is like cleansing the mirror of the mind. Now, what does that mean? Cleansing the mirror of the mind. Cheto Darpanam Arjanam. Our mind is a repository of dust. What is that dust called in the Sanskrit language? We've been discussing it for several days, those of you who have been attending the classes. It's called sanskar, the impressions that are left as a result of our sensual and mental engagements. Every one of us has sensual engagements. Every one of us has mental engagements. And they all leave their mark. They all leave their trace. One translator has given this term samskar as instinct, at least in animals. What we call instinct is actually samskar. It's an impression from a previous existence wherein you know what to do or you feel what should be done, et cetera, et cetera. So we are pure spiritual beings, in essence. We are comprised of 3, I want to say constituent elements. Sat, Chit, Ananda. 3 characteristics, maybe is a better way to put it. We have eternity. Every one of us feels like death is an artificial imposition. Every one of us wants to avoid it. That's, I think, without, you can raise your hand if you don't care about death. I think everybody doesn't want to die. At least it's an inconvenience. If you're a liberated soul, you still have to undergo the inconvenience of switching seats. Actually, one time, one person asked our spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, what happens when a person gets a heart transplant? What happens to the soul? Good question, isn't it? Anybody have an answer? What happens to the soul in the body when there's a heart transplant? Do you get like a new soul or what goes on? So Prabhupada said it's like changing seats. You switch from one seat to another. Oh, you please, we have to remove this seat now. It's got a broken leg. Can you please sit here? Yeah, no problem. So it's a little bit like that. So we are spiritual entities, but we are inhabiting material bodies for some time. For how long? Well, I think in this room, not more than 100 years each. And it depends on the species. It depends on the hardware, really. And we have system requirements that require, that the Krishna consciousness requires. The first system requirement for this is that you have to have the appropriate hardware, which is a human form of life, in order to run the software, which is bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness. And there are no bugs in this software. It's perfect. So if it doesn't work, we have to really scrutinize and see what we're doing wrong. Now, what might get in the way is this dust on the mirror. Another analogy given is that the soul, or the consciousness, rather, the symptom of the soul being consciousness, that consciousness is dusty and it reflects a hazy picture. We can't quite see who we are. Now, I was reading in chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita this afternoon, and there Krishna describes Shraddha mayo yam purushaha, yo yat shraddha sa eva sa. Anybody know what that means? Shraddha mayo ayam purushaha. This self, this person, this soul within the body, he is made of his faith. He's comprised of faith. In what sense? Yo yat shraddha sa eva sa. Whatever his faith, whatever is the condition of his faith, that is what he becomes. Shraddha bhavati. What is it? Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata. Everyone follows from his sattva, his nature. Sattva in this case doesn't mean goodness. It means your existence. Sattva, your beingness, as I said the other night. So sattvanu rupa, follow in accordance with your state of existence, your conditional existence within this material world, your incarceration within a particular material body and body-mind complex. The consciousness will be colored. It's called karnamatmaka, colored with fruitive activity, colored with different kinds of misconceptions. And the faith will correspond with those misconceptions. We have actually, how many material bodies do we each have? Let's see who's really sharp. One, he says. Anybody, any other answers? Technically speaking, this is a trick question, it's a technical question. There are two. There is this, what we call sthula sharir, gross physical body. That's the hardware, as I said. And then there's the sukshma sharir. Sukshma sharir, or it's also called the antahakarana. It means the internal body, which is mind, intellect, and ego. We all have this, I should say, false ego, because there is a real ego, but this isn't it. So the soul is actually a part and parcel of the supreme Paramatma, the supreme self, the supreme soul. There are two kinds of souls. There's the supreme soul, and then there's the minute soul. We are the minute soul, and God, or Krishna, Ishvara, Paramatma, he is the supreme soul. The function of the minute soul is to work in harmony with the supreme soul, in exactly the same way that the function of any little piece on your computer is actually meant to make the whole thing work properly. If it doesn't work, any little piece in your car, for example, if just one screw is loose, and then your car can stop moving. You see, so the self or the soul is actually meant to function in cooperation with the supreme whole, the supreme person. That's Bhagavan, God, Ishvara, Paramatma, many, many names. So we have an eternal constitutional identity as the servant of this Ishvara, the servant of Paramatman. But because of the dust covering the mirror of our consciousness, the dust that's clouding our picture, so to speak, clouding the reflection or even our self-image, we have forgotten this. And we misidentify with so many other things. We think I'm black, I'm white, young, old, male, female, rich, poor, Texan, whatever. These are all called upathis, artificial stamps on the soul. They're comprised of nothing but dust, really, misconceptions, misidentities. So in accordance with the infection of the three modes of material nature, that is to say goodness or sattva guna, passion or rajoguna, and ignorance or tamoguna, the faith will correspond to those three modes that influence us through a subtle association. And when the faith is contaminated, then the activities and the convictions and the personality, everything follows from that. This is what it means when Krishna says, Shraddha Mayoyam Purusha, this person is made out of faith. The faith is the chief element of any living entity, and all endeavors follow from one's faith. So what's the condition of our faith? What do we believe in? Everyone actually has 100% faith, but it's not all placed where faith actually belongs to be placed. Shraddha Mayoyam, we're comprised of nothing but faith. That's a spiritual entity, faith, but it becomes colored in exactly the same way that when a raindrop falls out of the sky and hits the mud, it's pure. It's distilled water until it hits the ground, and then it becomes muddied, sullied. So the soul can become colored with the misidentification with its associations, these being achieved in an abstract sense, at least, these three modes of material nature. When that happens, we develop so many misconceptions and our faith becomes tweaked, it becomes perverted, as Srila Prabhupada likes to point out, using his characteristic lingo. And then we have to pursue very ardently various kinds of misleading activities. And those activities result in continuation of a repeated cycle of birth and death in this material world, reincarnation. And we go on and on and on. I think I said the other day, I saw a bumper sticker that said born again and again and again and again. and again. So this is reincarnation. This is what we're going through, life after life. Now, when we come to the human species, we have adequate system requirements to get ourselves out of this cycle. An animal doesn't have that. An animal can't come and sit like a gentleman in this assembly and take in this understanding and really act on it. He's locked into the paradigm where all he can do is bark and eat and chase the other, the opposite sex and whatever dogs do. Human beings, we have sufficient intelligence and what the yogis call dharmendriya, a sufficient sense of what is right, that we can elevate ourselves beyond the animalistic propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That is what is unique about the human species. And in fact, you might find this hard to believe. It's in this respect, it's even better to be a human being than it is to be born as a god. We would like to be born as gods, wouldn't we? Indra, Chandra, Varuna, so many demigods. There are 33 koti, according to Vedic literatures, 33 crores of demigods. And they are very powerful compared to us. But they are carried away by that power in many of the same ways that power carries us away. You see? But human being, we have just a good mix. There's just enough suffering that we are awakened to. It should spur some thought, and in a conscientious person, it does. And there's also just enough enjoyment that we can be distracted from the unique goal of human life if we choose. The unique goal of human life being self-realization. And after you realize yourself, then you have the qualification to realize God. Until you realize yourself, you're not going to realize God because he's just like you, but more so. So much so that he doesn't become conditioned in the same ways that we do. It's on account of our minute size that we become infected by our associations. God is so great that that doesn't happen. Let's give a simple example so that we can all follow this. If you have a drop of water from the ocean, it should have all the constituent elements that are there in the entire ocean. But if that drop of water falls on your head, it's not a problem. But if the ocean falls on your head, you see, numbers matter, quantity matters. In a bonfire, you may have little sparks trailing out. They're basically the same stuff as fire. If they fall onto a pile of some inflammable, some very highly flammable substance, it can spark a new fire. But the spark may be extinguished by a cold or wet or whatever, and just by time alone, a spark may be extinguished, you see, on account of its minute size. The bonfire, not likely. You see, so it's like that with us. We are basically of the same stuff as God, but because we're very, very tiny, we forget who we are. And because Bhagavan, or the Supreme Paramatma, is very great, he doesn't fall into this illusion that we're in, you see. So therefore we find in the Vedic literatures, there's always this perennial argument, Dvaita or Advaita, you may have heard these terms. Is he one, or is there dualism? Are we one with God? Are we different from God? Well, in a sense, you can say we're one because we're really nothing but God. But in another sense, we're different than God because he's great and we're small. In Sanskrit, that's called Anu and Vibhu, great and small. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us, given all this context, given all this background about our spiritual identity and our current state of incarceration in a foreign environment, we're like fish out of water in this world, you might say. No matter how much you can give a fish as much money as you want, you can give him as many female fish as he wants, you can give him any number of things to eat, but until you actually put him in the water, he's not going to be happy. And we find this also in our material existence, no matter where it is, no matter what the species of life is, no matter what the program, relatively speaking, is in life, it's always frustrating because we seek eternity. We seek what is really a part and parcel of our very nature, that eternal nature that we share with God. We're constantly seeking that, but we're doing so in an environment that is frustrating at every step because it is not eternal. Don't fret about this. It's actually designed to fail. It's not supposed to work. It's meant to rectify this envious consciousness that we have. Why do I say envious? Because the post that which we seek has already been filled by Bhagavan. In short, we can say we're actually envious of God. Everybody, what Deva Amrita calls it, everyone has his God project in this world. I may not be the supreme Godhead of the entire creation, but at least I can be the God of the Bengalis. Or at least I can be the God of Denton, Texas. Or at least I can be the God of my profession. Or if nothing else, the God of my wife. And even if you're not that fortunate, then I get a dog. And I can lord it over him because he's man's best friend, and we all know they're very faithful. Actually, Vaishnava Kavi, he said, Vaishnava Thakur, Ami Tomar Kukur. So that's the scriptural sanction there for you. Means, I please make me your dog. He's praying like this. Dogs do have, although Prabhupada said dog means offense personified, a dog will not hesitate to run up and urinate on the tulsi plant. This is dog. But at the same time, they have some humility and they have some faithfulness and a service attitude. There are admirable things in all creatures. So anyway, what was I saying? We are spiritual beings, but we are temporarily incarcerated in all different kinds of bodies. Look around and figure it out. Everyone is conditioned by various modes of nature. Like the psychologists, they often argue about what's more prominent influence, nature or nurture, right? So actually, both of them are working at the same time, at all times. So we have got ourselves into a kind of a mess here through a bad decision to try to compete with God in becoming eternal, supremely eternal, I should say, supremely cognizant and supremely blissful. That position, as I said, has already been filled. We can become eternal, cognizant to our capacity, and blissful to our capacity. But it is filled through submission unto the Supreme Person. Theism, theistic submission, you might say. And this is not something that we like to hear in this mature world, and this modern society in which we live also is probably not going to encourage it because it's bad for business, if nothing else. It's not just, that rampant American capitalism is so much aggressive that, it's a sacrosanct principle. If something gets in the way of free trade, well, then it's just got to go. And similarly, there are elements in human society who are too much carried away by the modes of passion and ignorance. They actually dominate now in modern society. And as soon as you start talking about sattva guna or godly life or spiritual elevation, they just, like a bumper sticker I saw also, either speed up or slow down or get out of the way. They have no patience for it. So spiritual life and the endeavor for spiritual life, it's ridiculed in this world. It's spat upon. It's at best neglected. Certainly not very often encouraged. But that is what will satisfy our deepest yearnings for eternity, for full awareness. Full awareness means awareness to our capacity. And for the happiness that is constantly being either frustrated or interrupted at every step within this world. Three things happen, Tamal Krishna Goswami used to say. You can hanker after something and never be able to get it because your karma is insufficient. It's like you have an insufficient credit line. You can only buy so much. And, I gave the analogy the other day when someone wants to learn music, if he doesn't have that karma, it's not going to happen no matter how hard he works at it. Similarly, you may get something that you hanker for and then you lose it because both the thing that you're hankering for and the body that you're temporarily living in are temporary, and one or the other will be removed. Or if they're not removed, then the karma may run out, right? A person, we often see people get divorced now in modern society. So, the person is still there, and I'm still there, but the karma ran out, and so the situation finished, you see? So you may never get what you want. You may get what you want and then lose it, which is a cause for suffering. Or you may get what you want and then you find out it's not really all that it's cracked up to be and you're not satisfied and you go chasing after something else. This is why I say that we're not meant to learn lessons. We're meant to be perpetually bewildered because there's actually a very competent personality in mid-level management of the cosmos who is orchestrating this frustration at every step, and her name is Maya Devi. You've all seen the picture. She's riding on a tiger, holding what in her hand? Trishula. And what do each of the points of that trident indicate? Various kinds of miseries. Either miseries from our own bodies and minds, miseries from other people's bodies and minds, or miseries from fate itself. So if you have the karma to get what you want, if you get what you want and then you lose it, that's taken care of pretty easily by Maya's trident. But if you get what you want and you are not satisfied with it, that is the influence of Maya. Maya will twist your mind in such a way that you feel that I've got to get, everybody knows. If you make $1 million, you've got to make more than $2 million. If you become a billionaire, even that's not enough. And they're constantly, people are driven by kama, krodha, lobha. Tasmat etat trayam tyajet, Krishna says. Everybody should try to control these, at least if we want to be human beings, because I often say humanity is not biologically defined. Humanity is defined in terms of adherence to dharma. And dharma means the intrinsic nature of what the self is, the intrinsic nature of the human species, the function of that human species, which we've already defined, self-realization and ultimately God-realization. In a word, yoga. Yoga means to link, to connect, to join, to reestablish what we've lost now in terms of our spiritual engagement, eternal spiritual constitutional position. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Jiver Sharu Hoy Krishner Nityodash. The constitutional function of the living entity is to serve Krishna. This is the idea. Krishna means God. So we're here in this material world and we're covered over by so many kinds of misconception, and we get wrapped up in the vortex of this Maya, in the vortex of this karmic entanglement, and have to take birth after birth after birth after birth. And in each of them, the dust gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Returning to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's analogy, if you have a mirror and do not clean it for some time, what's going to happen? You're not going to see things so clearly. You can still get a pretty good reflection, but imagine if you have a mirror that's maybe stuffed away in your attic and you leave it there for 20 years and then bring it down. You may not be able to see through that dust at all. That's like tamoguna. People in the mode of ignorance, they have no inkling of their spiritual identity. And if you try to awaken them to that, they'll simply scoff. In the mode of passion, you may get a clear reflection, but it's unclear and it's twisted by your own motives, what you want to see. So a person may not be very interested in spiritual life because he's simply too distracted. Passion, the nature of passion is that it's producing endless, insatiable desires one after another. Dushpurerana lenacha, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, lust in particular, or desire in general. It burns like fire, which cannot be satisfied. You cannot put out fire by pouring gasoline on it. It just gets worse. And so when we try to pander to the desires that this material energy plugs into our 10 organic senses through what we hear, what we see, what we taste, touch, feel, smell, etc. So many desires are produced from that sangha, that subtle association. Sangat sanjayate kama, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. And our desires are formed in accordance with that. And that sangha also determines the nature of our faith. And our faith determines the nature of our actions. Our actions determine the nature of our future. Most of us can hardly get out of this. In fact, Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita as well, Daivi hiyesha gunamayi maya duratyaya. Nobody gets out of this. What is Durga? What does it mean? Durga, literally. Anybody know the etymology? Prison. And why is a prison called Durga? Gam, gachati. You cannot go. Very difficult time. Duhu, right? It's like this prefix. They call it upasarga in Sanskrit. It goes on words like sukha, dukkha, right? What does ka mean? It actually means the axle of a wheel. And if this is in a bovine culture, they didn't have automobiles when these words were invented, if they were invented at all. But if your axle is smoothly running, then that's called sukha. And if you're having a hard time due to improper lubrication of your axle, then dukkha, right? So similarly, durga, the same prefix is there, duhu, having a bad time of it. You cannot go, cannot get out. So this material energy, Maya Devi, she's meant to bewilder us and just delude us into chasing endless dreams, pipe dreams, forever and ever and ever. So this is the nature of this conditional consciousness. In order to come to a real understanding of what to do, one has to purify the mirror of the mind, covered by so much dust, for so many, God only knows how many kalpas, how many eons we've been rotting in this material existence, chasing after one illusory dream, chasing one illusory dream after another in various species, in various planets, in various universes, because there's more than one. That I think even many advanced physicists are now amenable to that idea. So it potentially can go on forever and ever and ever until we get fed up. And when we've had enough of this reincarnation in so many different forms, why would we eventually get frustrated by that? Because at every step, what are we dealing with here? In addition to these threefold miseries that I mentioned as the points of Maya's trident, you also have at least birth, death, old age, disease. Nobody gets away from these. Nobody. So you have to go through so much suffering, life after life after life. But when we become human beings, at least biologically speaking, because at least in Bengali language, many poets, they speak of the dvipada pashu, two-legged animals. Think about it. Dharmasya hina pashubhisamana. A man without dharma is not really much better than the animals. Srila Prabhupada used to say the animals, they're running around on four legs, chasing after eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And a human being, often enough, will do the same thing on four wheels instead. Think about it. So when we come to the human species of life, we are given an opportunity to take advantage of the unique feature that humanity offers one. That is this cultivation of higher learning, to simple thinking, satisfaction with the senses, with very basic necessities, no artificial grandizement based on a false ego, and cultivation of higher wisdom and knowledge that will elevate us, eventually, ultimately, beyond the suffering that frustrates our every attempt until that point. So this is what human life is meant for, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given a very easy process to attain this. It is the chanting of this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, especially, that we've been chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. According to the Shruti mantra, the Kali Santarana Upanishad, it says, Iti Shorashakam Nam Nam, Kali Kalmashanashanam, Nataha Parataropaya, Sarvavedeshu Drishyate. If you look throughout all the Vedic literatures, you will find no process more effective at removing the contaminations of this particular Kali Yuga, this particularly decadent age. No more effective process than these 16 names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu particularly emphasized this process of Sankirtana, which cleanses the dust of misconceptions from the heart and leaves us with a pure reflection of the self, attaining which we can begin to see things clearly. And doing that, all the priorities change and the faith will be purified, and we know what to do in the most progressive way. There are other benefits to this chanting, many, many more, but we've already taken some time. Now maybe I should ask if there are any questions or comments. Do you want to hear more, or do you want me to shut up? Nobody's saying a thing. I have no way of knowing. You really have to provide some feedback. One person at least asked a good question, which is very often answered. It's not particularly related, at least I didn't mention it yet. But it's often asked that if God is everywhere, then why do we go to the temple? It's a good question. Huh? There are many answers to this question that I could give, but I would just like to extend the ecstasy a little bit and just maybe plumb the audience for anybody have any sagacious offerings here that we can consider. If God is everywhere, then why do we go to the temple? Very good answer. Very good answer. The Srimad Bhagavatam says that if a person thinks that yatirta buddhe salile nakarahechit janeshu abhigneshu sa eva gokhara. If the person thinks bhoma ijyati, my land of birth is worshipable, because who doesn't think like this? We all think like this. If a person thinks that that the tirtas are just meant for taking a bath, and doesn't understand really the valuable association which is available there in the form of knowledgeable persons, tattvadarshis, gyanis, bhaktas, saints, sadhus. That person is not much better than a go or kara. Does anybody know what go and kara mean? Go means cow, kara means ass. They are also going and bathing in the Ganga. You can see so many of them. But what are they getting out of it? Water, clean, that's all. And even that only for a short time. You see? So, Kunjara Shauchavat, Parikshit Maharaj says in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like the bathing of an elephant. You hear something enlightening, something inspiring, something uplifting, and then you go out and throw dust all over yourself after you take the bath. Anybody ever seen this? Nowadays, they don't have elephants so much in India. Kerala, maybe, Assam, that's about it. But this is what they do. We have a couple of elephants in Mayapur, West Bengal, in our international headquarters there, ISKCON temple. So they do this. After they take a bath, they throw dust all over themselves. Sometimes we also do this because of the conditioning, the habituation that has been driven into us through eons of sangha, of asat sangha, I should say, of material association. And the strong hold, the strong grip that these gunas have on us, and the influence of Maya Devi, who is so powerful. We ourselves sometimes are recidivistic in that way. But, so that's the best answer, actually. Another answer I saw on the wall of one temple in Rajasthan. There's a small town in eastern side of Rajasthan called Karauli. In Karauli, there happens to be a very important deity for our Sampradaya, Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. His name is Madana Gopal. He was the worshipful deity of Sanatana Goswami. Originally, he was in Vrindavan, but due to Mughal threat in the 16th, 17th century, they took him to Jaipur, and from Jaipur, because the princess was married into the royal house of Karauli and could not separate from Madan Gopal went with her. That's a love story that we should all hear. Anyway, so I went to this temple, and on the wall of this temple, there, I wish I could remember the shloka, but I forgot it. But I do remember that what it meant is that although milk is distributed everywhere throughout the cow, it is only available in the udder. And in the same way, although God is everywhere in his creation, he accepts our service through the deity. You see? This is a wonderful way of seeing it. Because we can settle on these two answers to this question because they're both sufficient. Assuming that we understand the need to hear and associate with more advanced devotees, we can also say that having done that, then one has to act. As long as when you receive knowledge, along with that knowledge, especially if it's enlightening knowledge, there's a transmission of responsibility as well. You have to act. For example, if I say, I don't like water that's kept in plastic bottles. Please give me a glass of water, or the steel is the best thing. Copper is even better than that. And the host is simply listening very attentively and taking scrupulous notes, and does not actually bring the water in the way that I have requested it. Then you can really question as to whether he's heard what has been said, right? So in the same way, when Krishna is saying certain things, 3 times, 2 and 3 times in Bhagavad Gita, and those who have studied Bhagavad Gita, they know there are many, many verses in Bhagavad Gita that really are paraphrased at least twice, maybe more than that. What's one of them? Who knows? Any pundits here? A very famous verse from chapter 9 reincarnates in chapter 18 at the conclusion, as most of those verses do. They're reiterated at the end of the discussion. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. He says 4 simple things. Manmana, give me your mind. As I said the other day, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a very beautiful quote he made. He said that when we approach Krishna, especially in the form of his name, Krishna will come into our mind, into our heart. In Sanskrit land, the mind and the heart, there's koi fark nahi, right? The mana, it means the same thing as hridaya, the cheta, it's the same thing. So when we chant Krishna's name and invite him into our heart, then Krishna comes into our heart and he inspects the entire situation. And he says, I'm seeing so many mundane thoughts in here. So many mundane goals are being cherished in this place that you've invited me to sit in. So now I'm staking my flag. I'm laying claim to this entire area. All of you are trespassers. This is mine. Get out. See? This is how we become purified through chanting the holy name. Because Krishna and his name, they're not different. This is something that we have to, you can't really wrap our minds around it, but through chanting the holy name, we get what they call sakshat aparokshanubhuti. We get direct understanding. As I was telling someone earlier, you can't expect to taste honey by looking or examining or weighing it or smelling it or even feeling it with your fingers. If you want to understand what is honey, you have to actually taste it. You see? So in the same way, to realize the nature of Harinam, Krishna's name, we actually have to chant that name the way that Krishna himself is asking us. In Bhagavad Gita and other places, he mentions Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Ityadi, in so many other verses are there. To hear an instruction is to act on that instruction. And along with receiving knowledge is to try and apply that knowledge. When we live in terms of what we have heard, then we realize what we have heard, and it becomes solidified. It becomes second nature. Our samskaras change, actually. Just by hearing, even if you're not chanting, just by hearing, if you hear properly, it's potent in itself. Because after all, chanting is also a kind of hearing, isn't it? You see? So we actually get self-realization simply through sound. This is what the Vedanta Sutra itself calls anavrati shabdat, liberation through sound. So this is the power of this, especially this Mahamantra. So similarly, there are corollary processes with this chanting, which is the primary, what we call Yuga Dharma for this Kali Yuga. And one of those corollary processes is deity worship, because we cannot see Bhagavan with our presently conditioned eyes. They're too contaminated by association with so many other unsavory elements, right? Bhagavan is not, he's not obliged to come at our beck and call. He's not, doesn't have to come on our demand. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrataha. Krishna says, I reserve the right of not being available to such persons, materialistic eyes. So we cannot see Bhagavan in this world, but as a function of his mercy towards us, his kindness towards us, he appears before us in the form of the deity, not in a concocted form, but in a form that exactly corresponds to the descriptions that are given in authorized scriptures. It's not that if you put your mail into any box, it's going to go to the destination. It has to be an authorized U.S. post box. Otherwise, it's not going where you want it to go. This is a good analogy, Prabhupada used to say. So similarly, when you worship the deity in the temple, not only can you have darshan of God, you can see God, but more advanced than that, you get an opportunity to render some service unto God. God is everywhere, so great. How do you make him a flower garland? How do you offer him something, There was one, Prabhupada said, just like Mahavishnu, why don't we worship this Mahavishnu form? Mahavishnu is huge form. So how do you make a dhoti for Mahavishnu? You'll exhaust all the cloth factories in the world and still not have enough, you see? But Krishna has become so kind that he becomes this big in the form of a little stone ball, Shalagram Shila, or small deities, or in the temple, they're a little bigger, but still we can handle it, you see? So the opportunity for service is there in the temple, and the opportunity for association mainly is there in the temple. Because in the association of devotees, everything else will come. Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastra Koi, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. In the association of the devotees that are there in the temple, generally devotees live in the temple, then all the other processes of bhakti automatically follow. The devotees are going to do kirtan, you're going to hear from them something, they're going to give you prasadam, they're going to probably engage you in some devotional service, you see? So the temple is a very valuable place, not only because there you can see Krishna where he's not visible elsewhere. If you go to Collin Creek Mall, for example, you may not find Bhagavan there. You may get distracted. But if you go to the temple, it's pretty certain that you're going to see Bhagavan there, at least if you come on time. And having done that, then furthermore, you get the association of Bhagavan's devotees who can clarify what does Bhagavan mean when he says, Sarva Dharman Parityajamam Ekam Sharanam Vraja Ityadi. Just surrender to me, or as we said before, Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto, become my devotee, bow down to me, think of me, bow down to me is the next one. Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto, become my devotee, Madhyaji, worship me, Mam Namaskuru, and bow down to me. Simple things. Anyone can do this. So the ball is in your court. Krishna's not asking a whole lot, but if we take one step towards Krishna, he will take 10 steps towards us, and this is the thing that simply has to be tasted. You can't figure it out or try to calculate it, how it works. You have to experience it. This is the way these are his conditions. Anukula. It has to be on his terms, bhakti. When bhakti is performed on his terms, Krishna appears to you. You will reestablish your dormant relationship with Krishna by unclouding your sense of self, coming to uncover your real false ego, your real ego, getting rid of the false ego and coming to your real ego. That is called spiritual realization. So all of this is affected mainly by chanting, but there are corollary processes as well. I've mentioned some of them. Hearing, as we're doing now, worshiping in the temple, as we do sometimes. And all this is affected through good association, what we call satsanga. Okay? Anything else?
Why is there need to count when you are chanting?
Well, there's no need because the instruction is, both in Bhagavad Gita and from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. We should always be chanting. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, Kirtaniyaha Sada Harihi. There's really no need for counting, but those of us who take initiation into Krishna consciousness, we make a vow at that time that I will chant these holy names at least a certain amount of time. And to keep track, we keep the counting beads and whatnot, just to make sure that we fulfill our vrat. Otherwise, what is it? 1,728 names times 16. Kind of hard to keep track. But if you have a little bead every time you finish one mala, then you just mark it. So we all chant 16 malas every day. It takes about 2 hours. On the way here, we were discussing with Sri Rupa Prabhu that in the Gaudiya Math, among the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that is to say Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, all of them, when they took initiation, they made a vow that they will chant 64 malas every day. That takes about 8 hours. And they did it. Even those who were as busy with so much service as we are, even those who are working outside with professional obligations and family commitment, how they did it, I don't know, but it's pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing demonstration of commitment. And we balk and complain if somebody says, Try to chant one mala every day. Oh, I don't know if I can handle that. We're so weak, isn't it? Sumanda sumanda matayaha manda bhagya hupadrutaha, Srimad Bhagavatam says. Slow-witted, lazy, we're unlucky, we're misguided, we're always agitated, distracted, frenetic lives we lead. It's a very unfortunate age, this Kali Yuga. But this Harinam, if we sincerely take Harinam, then he can cut through everything. He will empower us. Anything can be done. I've seen it. I had a 3.9 GPA when I was in college, and I maintained not only my deity seva, but 16 rounds every day and preaching programs in addition to college engagements. So, you had a question? Well, there's a number of reasons that people worship Durga, and some of them are auspicious and some of them are not so. I'm going to answer your question a little bit indirectly. At least those who are from South India, they know you may have heard the name for Ganesh is Vinayaka. What does Vinayaka mean? What does Nayaka mean, first of all? A leader. And Vinayaka? Not Vishesh. Vigata. Vigata. It's different. Means he's leading you in the opposite direction. Because Riddhi Siddhi Dayaka, right? We know that Ganesh is facilitating all endeavors within this material world. But is that such a good thing? It's kind of like this. There was one story, there was one old woman, she was carrying a big bundle of wood on her back. And somehow or other she tripped or something and she dropped her bundle, and it was so big that she couldn't pick it up again and continue with her journey. So she folded her hands and said, "Hey, Bhagavan, can you please help me put this huge bundle on my back?" This is what we do. We go and pray in the temple for some, I've got to have the new Lexus or whatever the intoxication of the moment is. And it does tend to be pretty momentary, as we've already discussed. So Durga is similarly, she's superintendent of the entire material energy, including her son, Ganesh. And so she's really facilitating all of our material stuff. So some people go and pray to Durga. Generally, I would say most people, I think it's safe to assume most people are praying to Durga for material facility and enjoyment and whatnot. And, I am very hesitant to knock that because in a day and age when anything religious is being, thrown out the window as fast as possible, I don't want to discourage that. But Krishna does say, not me, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that kamaistaisthahrita jnana prapadyante anya devataha. Those who worship such demigods with, impelled by their material desires, one after another, kamaistais. Those people are not so bright, Krishna says. Or as my brother would say, they're not, he's not the brightest bulb on the chandelier. So that's generally why most people worship Durga. However, it's not entirely inconsistent with Vaishnavism to worship Durga also. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu set that example. When he was touring in South India, for example, he would not only go to Vishnu temples, he would also visit devatas and offer respects to them because they're very powerful, very august, honorable personalities, more highly posted in terms of their karma, at least, than we are. And the way I see it, at least, is that I need all the help I can get. And if anybody can help put in a good word to the big boss, then, Uparwala, then that's fine with me. Yes. Mm. This is another very good question. Did everybody get that? He was saying, well, why don't you repeat it louder, maybe? I know people who go to many temples and do this. They want to cover all their bases. In case the Ganesh doesn't work, let me check out Durga, and if say something to Krishna as well, and have a word with Lakshmi Narayan, and anything. So, like I said, I'm not going to knock that, because it is the Vedas do give these injunctions for demigod worship for real prosperity. In fact, that is the real way to have a prosperous material life. But I think when Krishna is discouraging that in Bhagavad Gita, the point is that one should really see through the falsity of this temporal existence that we're living in, and should try to really use human life for what it really has to offer. It's kind of like when people go to Tirumala and they worship Venkatesh Balaji, and they pray for Alexis only. He's Shripati. He is the Lord of the goddess of fortune. He can give you infinite wealth. He owns it all. And you go and ask him for a few hundred rupees. It's kind of like when you go to Bill Gates. It's expected that you have something important to discuss if you ask him, "Can I borrow $5?" So that's the idea here. And however, that said, Srimad Bhagavatam also takes a very liberal approach to this, and we're following Srimad Bhagavatam as the chief, most important of all the Vedic literatures. It says, "Akama sarvakamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogina yajeta purusham param." That means that if you have no material desires at all, whatsoever, no desires, akama, or sarvakamova, if you want it all, or if you're desiring liberation, mokshakama, udarati, if you are really intelligent, udarati, if you have a broad intelligence, then yajeta purusham param. You should worship the Supreme Person. So worship Krishna, even if it's just for something material, but hopefully, if you worship Krishna and are sincere about doing what Krishna wants instead of what we want Krishna to do for us, because people do business with God. In fact, this is what Hanuman said. Anybody know this? A famous verse from the Ramayana. Hanuman was saying that I think these people who are coming and asking you to do whatever they want from you, to get what they want from you, he said, these people are merchants. They're varniks. Who's coming to you and asking you for what you want? This is the real bhakti, you see. So worship Krishna in all circumstances, even if it's for something material. If I have a material problem that's driving me up the wall, I'm going to go to Krishna and tell him about it and say whatever you want. But this is the point, whatever you want. If you want to relieve this situation, please be informed I'm suffering. He already knows. But, we make that gesture, and that pleases God. That is a low-level kind of devotional service, and it's meaningful. If a person has no higher adhikar than that, then it should be encouraged by all means. But if a person has adhikar to move up a little bit spiritually, then that should be encouraged. This is another tenet of the Srimad Bhagavatam that it's in the Sanskrit language it says, Sway sway adhikare ya nishtha saguna parikirtata. It's considered to be a qualification if you act exactly in accordance with your adhikar. Adhikar, you all understand. What is the meaning of the word adhikar? It means your prerogative. Prerogative means both what you're enjoined to do and what you're qualified to do as well. So you should not aim higher than that because you'll fall short of it. That's the Peter principle. And that's considered to be a dosha. And you should not be satisfied with less than what you're qualified to do also, because then you're selling yourself short and you're not getting what human life really has to offer. So we should exactly fit according to our adhikar. We should behave appropriately. Now, the thing is that if we are progressive, or as the Bhagavatam put it, udaradhi, if we are really progressive and thoughtful and conscientious, then our adhikar will be raised slowly. Or if we take up this process of chanting Hare Krishna, the adhikar is raised very fast. Otherwise, how is it so that in the beginning, say 30 years ago, in the beginning of this movement, mostly its members were coming from lecha backgrounds? Lecha means an uncivilized, meat-eating. I mean, people in this country they'll do anything at any time, anywhere, in any degree. You see? thoroughly undisciplined, in other words, adharmic in that sense. How is it possible that they can be turned into exemplary, noble, very refined Vaishnavas? That means there's something very powerful in this process. So adhikar can be raised also. That's another point. Anything else? Other questions or comments, complaints, challenges? Yes, Gopi Gita. Jorse. I have not spent that much time in Mayapur that I could say, you know. My consciousness is still stuck in 1978 when there was just the little deities. You know, I mean, I can say that they're certainly all attractive, as you can see. Very large deities also, as is everything in Mayapur, it seems. Sorry? Well, we live in Govardhan, and we worship Giriraj Govardhan. There's a nice pada in Brajbhasha language. They say, Shri Govardhana ki rahiye, tareti Shri Govardhana ki rahiye. Nita prati madana gopala lal ke, charana kamala chitya lahiye. Tana pulakita brajaraja mein lotata govinda kunda mein nahiye. Rasika pritama hit chita ki baate, giridhari ji so kyahiye, tareti Shri Govardhana ki rahiye. Means may I always live at the foot of Govardhan Hill, every day taking darshan of Madan Gopal and keeping his lotus feet stamped in my heart, wandering around Govardhan Hill doing parikrama, covered with the dust of that holy place, Tanapulakita Brajarajaman, bathing in the dust of Govardhan and being thrilled with ecstasy at that very wonderful good fortune. Then, uske baad, Govindakund mein nahiye. Then I can wash off in Govindakund. Rasik Pritam, he was the author of this song. That was his upanam. His real name was Goswami Harirai, Pushti Margya Goswami. He said, he said, please inform Giridhari of these most confidential desires of my heart. Very nice song. Anyway, we do what Krishna wants. We don't know anything about these things. Whatever Krishna asks, that's what we do. Yes? Journey home. Yeah. Nope. But I did read Baba Ram Das's book, as many people have. And it's what we can describe as textbook Mayavad, impersonalism. And, you know, that realization has merit. It is spirituality. It's transcendentalism. But it completely eradicates the prospect of bhakti. And for that reason, it's not satisfactory. As Hanuman said, I don't want any kind of benediction from you. He's speaking to his Lord, Ram. I don't want any kind of benediction from you that will erase this master-servant relationship. The bhakti that I seek is one in which this relationship can be maintained eternally. This is bhakti. So the impersonalism is also rejected for that reason. Anything else? It looks like this means we should be chanting more kirtan. Is that okay? But if anybody really has any burning questions or is losing sleep about anything that we've said so far, और कोई प्रश्न है? और शिकायत? Okay. All right, so let's do some kirtan.